Okay, this is my reaction to UFC 298. We're not going to go over every single fight on the card. In fact, there are three main things that I want to talk about after UFC 298, now that that has happened. The first one is going to be Alexander Volkanovski. Second one is going to be Robert Whittaker. And the third one is going to be the biggest loser on the card yesterday. And I think that's Sean O'Malley. And we're going to get to that a bit later on. Firstly, let's start off right away with Alexander Volkanovski and that tragic loss. That one really hurt. I was so upset last night. I felt that feeling of like going through a breakup, like it was over. You just knew that this moment was over. It really felt that way. It was so weird to feel it and to watch it in sport. I thought as a seasoned MMA fan that I had gotten over that in the past, like when Aljo had actually finally lost and we saw that he wasn't coming back, and even more recently, oh my God, time moves so quickly. Even more what feels like recently, Tony Ferguson against Justin Gaethje. Like, we've had these moments in the past where we've started to see our heroes fall off and slip away. You know, it was similar with Dominic Cruz. You just wake up one day and Cody Garbrandt is putting it on Dominic Cruz in a way that you just cannot imagine. And every single fighter gets old, and as we age, we are just a little bit slower, a little bit chinnier. And Volkanovski was battling that entire narrative all week long, which I love. That was hilarious. But when it actually happens again, why are you so surprised about it? Why do you feel so sad that it happened? You should know that this was coming, Doug. Yeah, you can't help it, can you? You're like, this time will be different. This time Volkanovski can do it. He can charge ahead. Obviously not. Obviously he can't. He is just a human. We all age, and that is the game. So what are we going to do with Alexander Volkanovski? I think the MMA guru put this perfectly. Alexander Volkanovski's next fight should be a title fight. But the next title fight that happens doesn't need to involve Alexander Volkanovski. He is 100% right when it comes to that, which is wild because I have been the biggest fan of active fighters. I want to see my active fighters. I want them in there all the time. I use Alexander Volkanovski as that gold standard of an active fighter. However, there is obviously a limit to everything, and now Volk has started to hit that limit. He is now 35 years old. 2 KO losses. It is time to have 6 to 8 months off. And if we are going to allow Israel Adesanya to sit out for no reason and then come back and get an immediate title shot purely because we like him, we need to keep that same energy. If we are going to allow John Jones to hold up an entire division, we need to keep this sort of energy to all our title contenders, to all the top 5 UFC fighters that have done work for the UFC, okay? Like Bisping GSP got awarded this. You know, he could come back and fight Michael Bisping without doing any work, purely just off the legacy of his name, and GSP 100% deserved that. I think Volkanovski is that level of fighter. You know, like he talked in his post-fight press conference that he has been in the division since 2019. He's been the champion since 2019. That is a crazy long time to be a champion for. So I think we should give Alexander Volkanovski that 8 month grace and just see where the division's at and then come back, you know. Ilya Topuria has got plenty of fights to look at for his next fight. The division's got plenty of play in it. So just let Volk sit out for a little bit and then allow him to come back. But I don't think he's going to win this. I do not think he's going to win another title shot. I don't think he's going to win another title fight. I think the longer that he ages out, and now the more hesitant that he's going to become because of these 2 knockouts, is going to work against him. Plus, he's going to start to lose that speed. It's very similar to Tony Ferguson, where the mind is still there, but the speed just starts to slip back a little bit. And I think that's what's going to happen with Alexander Volkanovski. I think now he's always going to be a step behind. I know he won that first round. I know he won that first round, and he looked good in that first round. And he spoke about this in his post-fight press conference, and so I'm sure that his team were aware of it as well. But as good as he looked in that first round, he didn't look like classic Volkanovski to me. With Alexander Volkanovski, because he's usually the shorter fighter with less range, he will do a lengthier combination than just a 1-2. He will do a 1-2, step in, finish with a leg kick, try and get off an uppercut. He's always looking to be that first in, last one out fighter, a first and third fighter, they call it quite a bit. And Volk didn't have that. He looked very point striky. He looked very get in a jab, get in a good jab, move away. Get in a jab, maybe get in a two, move away. And that's not classic Volk. Classic Volk is a 1-2, 3, 1-2 leg kick. Classic Volk is charging in, doing just a little bit more. And we didn't see that. Now, it was only the first round after what had happened after Islam Makhachev. So is that a Volkanovski losing his step, or is that just a Alexander Volkanovski that is just getting back into the cage against an opponent, getting competitive again? This isn't sparring. We're not in a room full of people that are trying to help you along. We are against El Matador, someone who is trying to kill you. So can we forgive him for that first round being a little bit, let's just do a couple of laps of the pool and see how the body feels? Yeah, we can. So I didn't see my classic Alexander Volkanovski in that first round, but I think that's a little delusional to expect to see the classic Alexander Volkanovski in that first round. Having said that, I do think now that we are just in that stage, and I do predict for the rest of Alexander Volkanovski's career, because he is a competitive guy, he will want to stay in the cage and keep fighting. My prediction for the rest of his career is we see a very Jose Aldo-esque for the run of his career. Does that make sense? He is going to have a similar path as Jose Aldo, where Aldo, he was sort of always still there. He was still the guy that up-and-coming contenders tested themselves against, and they were in damn close, exciting fights, and then he changed weight classes and nearly had another run at the title until he ran into Merab Dvalishvili, who we're going to talk about. And he was always right there, just a little step behind, and he became the name that these future contenders and future champions that we're talking about, right? The Max Holloway, Volkanovski, Merab, who's a future contender, looks amazing. We weigh their names against a name like Jose Aldo, and I think that is what we're going to start to see from Alexander Volkanovski. We are going to be weighing the future contenders' names against his name, and he might, lose a couple of fights, win a couple of fights, move up to lightweight, lose a couple of fights, win a couple of fights, be that guy that's just right there all the way from 35 to 38, 37, and then he just sort of fades away and we clap him off for having such an amazing career. I think that's what we're going to see next for Volk. For Topuria, get back in there, man. Get back in there as quickly as possible. What I think is next for Topuria, we're going to talk about as we talk about Merab Dvalishvili. Robert Whittaker. I want to mention Robert Whittaker for a bit. Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa. I do think Robert won that fight. I don't like how close Robert made that fight look. I think Robert Whittaker is looking like a really beatable fighter. This week going into it, I said I need to see that classic, clean, crisp Whittaker performance to know that he's still right there. I didn't see that. I saw Robert Whittaker getting hit quite a bit off Paulo Costa that hasn't been in the cage for like 10 years. And to me, with what we've seen with Paulo's performance against Robbie and what we saw against DDP's performance against Robbie, Robert Whittaker is that Israel Adesanya-esque fighter that is obviously going to bounce around and pop shots. We know that about him. Whereas he was very, very good at counters. And it seems to be now, if you're rushing in and rushing forward at Whittaker and are happy to cop one but put another one on him, again, first in, third one, the first one to run in, the last one to make a shot. If you're willing to get hit once with Robbie, you will out damage him, and he is starting to get chinny. And I do see, I see Robert beating Sean Strickland in a fight, because Sean Strickland is stand there and play the tap-tap game with you, and Robert can do that better than Sean can. I see Jared Cannonier beating Robert Whittaker if they rematch, because Cannonier will charge forward just that little bit more. I see Dricus du Plessis beating Robert Whittaker again, because Dricus du Plessis will charge forward and do a little bit more. I think the kind of style that Robert has is the exact reason that second fight with Israel Adesanya was so close, because you're matching two styled fighters that are very similar, point for point, point for point, point for point. And Izzy is going to win that most times, and I thought Whittaker won that one, but the second fight. I thought Robert Whittaker won that second fight, but I thought he won it because of how close he is going to make it with Israel Adesanya because of their style. So Robert Whittaker, he is that name that is there to be taken right now by somebody who really, really wants it. If somebody really wants that name, they could charge in there and grab it. He is right there for the taking. I think he's just losing that step just a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see who they match him up with and what fights he chooses to take. How is Robert Whittaker going to manage his career going forward? The last thing that I wanted to talk about was Merab Dvalishvili and the biggest loser of the entire weekend, Sean O'Malley. Merab looked so good. So good. His antics on Twitter this week won him some fans. The memes that he's been putting out has won him some fans. The way that he fought won him fans. To be able to pick up Henry Cejudo and slam him down and then start talking to Mark Zuckerberg, to do all that wins you a ton of fans, and the UFC needs you to have a fan base that they can sell you to. That is the entire game that we're playing here, and Merab has won that game. Merab outpaced Triple C. He won that game. He is 100% the next person that is going to be fighting for the title. They cut to Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley looked like a little kid pissing his pants. Sean O'Malley doesn't want anything to do with Merab Dvalishvili. We know that. Sean is so scared to fight Merab. I don't even know if maybe scared isn't the right word. I think Sean O'Malley just knows that that right there, that bloke over there in the funny hat, is the end of my career. That is the end of my championship run. So he starts looking in any other direction he can, and we've seen that this week. He's been calling out Ilia Topuria if Ilia Topuria is to win that fight. I don't think Sean O'Malley can beat Ilia Topuria any easier, but I do think that Sean O'Malley will keep pushing for that fight because it's a free loss. He goes in there, moves up a weight class, loses to Ilia Topuria, and he still is a champion. He still gets to keep that belt for another 6 months. And I think he's the biggest loser here because before we saw Ilia in this fight against Volk, before that devastating knockout, it was always a rangy striker Sean O'Malley versus Ilia Topuria, who could probably box and stand with Sean O'Malley, but would win that fight in the grappling, you know, in the submission and the grappling and the pace that he would put on, clinch up with Sean O'Malley, trip him up, take him to the ground and choke him out. You know, sucks, but not the worst thing in the world. Now with the power as well, if Ilia Topuria can charge in, not grapple, but put real hands on Sean O'Malley, he can hurt Sean O'Malley. I think he could knock Sean O'Malley out. And either way, now that Sean O'Malley looks, he is looking at a potential KO loss that could take your chin away from you and hurt you moving forward. Or Merab Dvalishvili, who is just going to do what it's going to be Merab by however he wants against Sean O'Malley. So Sean O'Malley is really stuck in this position of, I'm stuffed either way. He might as well move up and get a free loss, but he's going to move up, get a free loss, and probably get knocked out in the process. And that just, I mean, that's a shitty future to look forward to, isn't it? Right, they were the main things racing through my mind after UFC 298. Overall, I enjoyed the card. There were some dull moments. I'd like to see Arinya Nakamura have some finishing power. That sucks that he doesn't have that. Mackenzie Dern, she can't fight. She cannot fight. She's brilliant at jiu-jitsu. She cannot fight, and she is lucky that she got clinched up in that fight to drag it out. If there was any fight IQ and ground and pound was thrown, that fight would have been over. I don't know why Lemos clinched up instead of just throwing ground and pound, whatever. But overall, the entire fight card was very, very enjoyable. Kopylov sucks. That one sucks. I was a big Kopylov enjoyer, and I'm going to continue to be a Kopylov enjoyer, but I needed to see him get a win. We all wanted to see him. I wanted to see him get a win. Anyway, that was UFC 298. Super enjoyable card. Super enjoyable card. I had a great time watching that. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think is next for Alexander Volkanovski? Like, how do you see his career moving forward? And who would you match up Robert Whittaker with next? How do you see that division playing out? Put that down there in the comments. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, if you're still here watching it all the way up to this, you know, maybe go ahead, give us a subscribe. I appreciate every single subscriber. And of course, I will see you all in the next video.